Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. This is a privilege and a joy for me to be up here on stage with my good friend Justin Gold. We're going to have the ability to go really deep with Justin, and I'm honored to have you on stage, man. So thanks for joining.
Dude, it's like to be here.
So today we're going to talk a little bit about the journey, the scars, and the legacy. We're not talking about revenue here. We're not talking about metrics. We're not talking about go-to-market strategy. We're going to talk about real founders. Founder and consumer that's truly defined a category. And Justin, you didn't just make nut butter. You reimagined it. You took a sleepy, commoditized shelf and you turned it into one of the most dynamic categories in the natural food ecosystem. You transformed peanut butter into a premium, purposeful lifestyle brand. And you're not just a category creator. I actually look at you as being a category definer. And, you're a founder that doesn't just build products. You live it. Your name is on the label. It will always be on the label. And I just want to go really deep with you because you talk about identity. You talk about getting wrapped up into your career. Talk about, is the brand me? Does it define me? Is my identity the brand? And here you are. We all have it in our pantry. It's on the package. I want to go a little bit deep with you. At the beginning, when you're in your kitchen, Colorado, and you decide, I'm going to make some nut butter. Like, how did this idea inspire you? How did it get started?
So when I first started, the name of the nut butter company was called Paragon Nut Butter. Paragon Peanut Butter and then Paragon Nut Butter. Can I see a show of hands who knows what Paragon is or means in the room? Oh, really? So exactly, right? So Paragon is a model of perfection, right? And so I was 23 years old. I crafted the nut butter, and such a, arrogant bastard. But so I'm making nut butters in my kitchen, in my home, calling it Paragon. I trademarked it, whatever, had the Secretary of State, filed in Colorado. And then I started, putting it all throughout the cupboard, throughout the house and, in the cupboards and in the fridge. And 20 years ago, it's crazy to think that there weren't flavored nut butters and there weren't mixed nut butters. It was just smooth or crunchy. And so it was really kind of a fun idea to add honey, to add cinnamon, to add chocolate, to add all these fun things. And my roommates would always steal them and eat them. And I literally started putting Justin's on the jar, and it just worked. People really responded to that. And I think that in hindsight, what really happened, which was so tremendous, and I know you guys all know this, but I didn't realize it at the time, is it gave the brand this authentic voice, this personality that you can't fabricate. It gave it values, it gave it purpose, and everything was my values, was my purpose. And it was really fun because I got to live like my best life through this brand, and anyone who came into the brand had to buy in on the values. Mm-hmm. And if you share values with someone, they're like your friends. And we had this really great community of friends that became family. And then the whole brand was really like my fantasy. So, we're making nut butter, and if you want to do something different, like, peanut butter cups, right? Like, I had a board of advisors I'll never forget. And they were like, whoa. Wait, we just launched this nut butter brand and you want to do peanut butter cups? They're like, no, it's a terrible idea. It's different category, different buyers, different supply chain. And I was like, well, it's what my purpose is. And so we would make peanut butter cups. And so it was really great because I would just get to follow, what I needed to do and wanted to do. And so building it was really, really easy once it had my name on it.
And how old were you when you started it?
23.
23 years old. 23. At that point in life, you got nothing to lose. You feel like you're invincible, but we just know it's hard, man. Give me an example of just a breaking point where you're like, I do not know if I can go on. I do not know if this will work. This is brutal.
Yeah, I had one pivot breakthrough and one breaking point. The pivot breakthrough was, so we had jars of peanut butter and they were differentiated just on flavors, but it wasn't enough. Our velocities were low, our costs were too high, our margins weren't high enough. And then I was on a mountain bike ride and I was eating energy gels and power goos and or whatever they're called. And anyway, I really wanted protein in a squeeze pack, and no one had ever delivered protein and peanut butter in a squeeze pack before that was made available commercially. And so I thought that was a really interesting idea. And so I started to contact all these contract manufacturers, and there were probably 3 of them in the country, and they would do mayonnaise, mustard, hair conditioner products, skincare lines. They did everything, but they wouldn't touch peanuts or almonds because of the cross-contamination. So at that point, I really felt like this was a great idea, and it's what I wanted to do. And so I borrowed $75,000 from my roommate's parents, and bought our own squeeze pack machine. And what was really interesting is I had everything on the line, right? I borrowed money I didn't have from a roommate. Everything was in this squeeze pack machine. I was sharing a kitchen with Beryl from Bobo's Oat Bars. I couldn't even afford my own production facility. And
there's TJ right there.
yeah, TJ that who's turned the company around and crushing it. And so everything is on the line for these squeeze packs. And, I had to get packaging printed, rolls of film printed, I had boxes printed, everything ready to go. And I was really lucky that I had, honestly, Whole Foods and Wild Oats in Boulder as really good partners. And I was able to get in a few stores. And I did exactly what I probably most of you would do here is I put it in a big tray, like an energy bar, and I sold it in the energy bar set. And I was like, all right, this is going to be it. It's going to totally transform the category. It's just like a bar. You take it with you, but you can eat it out of the pack or put it on a banana or whatever. And I put it in the energy bar section, and it bombed, right? Nobody was buying it, and I was devastated. And then I would watch consumers and how they were shopping, and I know we all know this. Like, people are in a rush. And when they get into a store, if you're not on the list, you're probably not in the cart, and people are moving. And if they see something and they don't know what it is and it's not on sale, they'll probably just ignore it. And if they do see it and they pick it up and they still don't know what it is, they're not going to buy it. And so, I was really devastated. And as a Hail Mary, we decided to put it in a small box and put it next to the jars, and sold them in the peanut butter section. And this abstraction of what it is went dissolved, and it just became kind of like a trial size. And what was shocking is almond butter was starting to get a halo. And so someone could enter the almond butter category for about $1 instead of spending $10 on a jar. And so that people were buying their own trial. And then when they actually wanted to buy almond butter, they would buy the brand they already knew. And so they were buying Justin's. And so our jars lifted and people were buying their own trial. It was genius, right? I wish I had thought of it.
Unreal.
And it kind of took off. And then so now this is fun and games, right? And like maybe I'm 25 now, and like we're blowing, and like we're building our team. And Boulder is such a great community. I had a lot of executives from Izzy had dissolved and had come over to Justin's, and I had a lot of great leadership in the organization. And then everything came crashing down, and we had our first and really ever only recall. And it was more of a withdrawal, but it doesn't make a difference. It affects your company the same. And what happened was, everything changed at that moment. And a recall is really serious because what happened in our case was there was a salmonella hit at a Trader Joe's peanut butter jar, and they traced it back to a facility which we bought peanuts from. And the peanuts we were buying roasted and then grinding and turning into peanut butter in our own factory. But that organization wasn't keeping track of their lots. And so the FDA brought everything back, including peanuts that we had bought for them. And at that moment, all the stores took all the peanut butter off the shelves. Didn't matter what the lot code was. Big signs were hung on where those shelves were. It said recall. If you have these lots, contact or whatever. Whatever. I forget what it said. And at that moment, people stopped buying Justin's. And at that moment, I was personally responsible for every single person who bought a jar who someone could get sick. And if someone did get sick, and if someone passed away, that's forever.
And it's your fault because your name is on that label. Did you ever reach a point where you're like, oh my God, like how in the hell did this happen to me? And should I have actually put my name on this label?
Well, I mean, like at that point it's too late. So, I mean, I didn't sleep for 3 weeks. And the anxiety of not knowing what could happen. Could all of this go away? Could I end up, criminally negligent for not, taking the right steps or whatever? And people did go to jail. Was it this one or PCA? There were so many peanut butter recalls. We were caught up in one. And, but I felt sorrow. I felt guilt. I felt anxiety. And most of all, I felt really stupid. I realized that I should have been on top of that. I should have had the right people. I should Peter Burns, which should be, trust but verify. I was trusting people to do their job with my name, and I wasn't verifying that it was being done.
And talk about devastation, not to go too deep, but I'm going to. You're going through this period. You bring in the whole Izzy team, the gentleman that you hire to run your company with you, alongside you. He passes away. You gotta take the reins, and you have to steer the ship. Just share with me a little bit about what you felt when this all happened and how you found the inner strength to rally your company and all the people following you.
So So when Justin's first started, like, first of all, it's really hard because it's called Justin's, right? But like, I can't take credit for the success of this company. I can take credit for a small part, but guess what? Because my name's on the jar, I get all the credit and I don't deserve it. And it's really tricky because when things go good, you get all the credit. When things go bad, you get all the blame too. But there were so many great people. And so one of the guys was from Izzy. His name's Lance Gentry, and he was like a VP of marketing at Izzy, and he was like a total rock star, total stud. One time he walked into an assembly for like CU on a Segway when Segways still weren't cool, just to get everyone's attention. Like the whole room was buzzing and talking, and then he comes on a Segway and you could hear a pin drop. And so he had a way of really commanding people's attention, and he came in as a mentor. And when you're 23 years old and you have a business plan to do like, squeeze packs and peanut butter jars, I couldn't get anyone to invest in this company because I didn't have a track record and, still had long hair, and no one, like, it was really hard. But when you bring someone in who has industry experience, who's got a larger than life personality, who's, basically was, my number one, he gave me the opportunity to raise money at a serious level from angel investors. And then we're running the company together. We just launched the squeeze packs. We're getting into peanut butter cups. And then one day he has a headache that doesn't go away, and he's diagnosed with brain cancer. And he was like one of my best friends. And then within like, I don't know, 6 months, 7, 8 months, he had passed away. And he left behind 2 kids who were 7 and 8. And so the whole business had to first grieve and stop and cry and then and I had to figure out, holy crap, like I got to carry this bag by myself. And then we got into a recall, and so it was the lowest point. But at that moment, the best thing happened because I realized that, I hate to say it like this, but I needed an adult in the room, and we were $2 million in debt. And while we were going through all of this, VMG, private equity group, was doing due diligence on us, and this all goes down. And to their credit, to Wayne Wu's credit, he was like, you know what, Justin, I believe in you, and we're going to get through this, and we're going to close the deal. I'm not going to change the terms. And that was, I needed an adult in the room. And VMG, to their credit, would, held me accountable to a standard that I needed to grow up, to run a sophisticated and very like volatile food system.
And you bring in Peter Burns, and you end up building this beautiful platform, this incredible business. It sounds like you have to go really deep to find this strength and conviction and know that you need an adult in the room. And you find the guy. Peter actually was supposed to be here today, but he's the best. He's one of the best out there. And through that journey, you grow the business so much that you're pursued. And then all of a sudden, Hormel comes to you and they want to acquire your business. They want to.
Well, here's the thing, entrepreneurs, right? So for those of you who have a food company, and whether or not your name's on it, it doesn't make a difference. Like, it's your baby. It's your favorite thing. It's your happy place. It's your family. And yes, like I knew as soon as I got in with private equity that, the joke is there's a for sale sign on your building as soon as private equity enters, because eventually that's the end game. But like, come on, what are the odds? Like Justin's is going to do well. I mean, of course, if we believe it, but when Justin's was finally acquired, it was one of the saddest days of of my life. It was so shocking. Everyone in the organization had equity, because I wanted to be fair and equitable, and I wanted everyone to feel like an owner and a family. And when Justin sold, everyone was celebrating and popping champagne. Like we did it. We set out our goals, and I was faking it. Like I was not happy. I was miserable, and I had so many conflicted feelings. One was like, what am I going to do? Right? Like all these founders leave their brands the moment that the check clears, and that wasn't my goal. And and then I felt like I sold out because in our industry, it's the American dream to sell your company and get paid a lot of money and be free of whatever. But now you're a sellout. And I've sold to the man, I've sold to big business, I've sold to big agriculture. I sold to the largest pork slaughtering organization who has, Applegate and Hormel, Dinty, whatever, and they also own Skippy. And it was purposeful because I wanted to help grow their, organic plant-based protein platform, but I'd sold out. And I felt really awful. And I felt like PETA was going to come to our office and spray paint the front walls, and that, I get called out in the newspapers, and that's not my company. Like that's me.
It's incredible. I remember.
So weird.
I remember when you invited me out to your ranch and you had sold the company and you bought the new CEO of your house, the new CEO of Hormel, and your team to do a leadership integration. And we're sitting there in the room, and there's excitement and there's sadness. It was like this level of sadness because no longer were you the one steering the ship, But very rarely do you find a founder who says, I'm here, I'm staying on, I'll pretty much work for free. Give me some health insurance, and I'm here for 5 years to help you make sure this mission-driven brand is brought to life the way I always dreamed. Tell me about that experience. You sell it, you think they're going to be these incredible stewards of your business. How does it end up looking?
So here's the interesting part. So the ride's amazing. You know, Janica was our banker, and we would fly across the country and do management presentations to all these different food conglomerates. And we met with all of them. And some of them would literally like have a private jet pick you and your family up and take you to their headquarters to really show you what it would be like to be, you know, to wow you. And we were wowed. And we had a competitive process, and it was every company is really showing up to try to like win you. And it was this fantasy, and it was so like, and then you get wrapped up in the fantasy, and then it's almost like, you know, watching your kid go to college, and you're like, I guess I could see them here or maybe there, you know, and then you get wrapped up in do we want the biggest number? Do we want the best opportunity for this brand to thrive? And at the end of the day, it wasn't the biggest number; it was the second biggest number, and it was the right opportunity. Hormel was the best for this brand, and then so here you are, right? You're the founder, like there's, I don't know, 50,000 people, 20,000 people working in this big public company, and you've achieved like the dream, right? They bought your brand, and then you show up at at a corporate event, and, you know, you're on stage and you're talking to everyone there, and everyone in that room silently kind of despises you because you know, they're working, I don't know, 50 hours a week to help, you know, grow your business that you just got paid a ton of money for. And it was a really weird feeling. And so at the organization, I felt like I was resented. And I felt like that at Justin's, to continue to take my advice would kind of, you know, would be buying into, you know, the success I already had. And I don't deserve any more success because now it's theirs. And so I stayed on for 5 years, and mostly because for founders like who do get acquired, it's so interesting, right? It's so fascinating to see how big public food companies work, how integration works, who stays, who goes, how they roll them in, how they involve. I was so fascinated, and it was so interesting to stay. And it slowly and inevitably like took everything out of my heart because, you know, no one would listen. And that's not fair. Not no one would listen, but, you know, it's like, it was really hard, but I learned a lot, and I really appreciate the experience. And I really feel like I was able to continue some of the values within the organization. And all of us are aspirational. We're like, well, maybe Justin's will you know, become one of their biggest brands, and will change the system from within, and we can be a culture of change within this, you know, and it could if they really bought into it. But at the end of the day, they were so focused on short-term gains that it was hard to see past, you know, a long vision into the future.
100%. Thank you for that. You know, you fight so hard when you do this to say this has to stay authentic to Boulder. We must keep our headquarters in Boulder. We must take care of our team that built this brand, Justin's. And you sell, and all of a sudden, the people that you think are on this journey with you for life are like, hey, there's a new owner in town. We're actually going to leave. You're staying on, and we're not staying on. That must have been a real bit of tension.
So we had about 50 people in the organization, and every week I'd have 3 people come up to me individually and say, hey, Justin, do you have a minute? And I was like, oh, okay.
God, you know how that goes.
You know, like, yeah. And then they'd, you know, hey, I just want to say thank you so much. You've changed my life. It's been such a great honor. I'm going to leave. And after like doing that 30 times, it was really hard. It really crushed me. And I felt like I was alone at this organization. But then new people would come in, and you want to sell them into the values. But it's right. It's the people of the organization that really make it tremendous. And it's just fascinating. Like, I did not think that I would, and like, I have a great life, right? Like, I'm not going to be up here and be like, oh, poor me. But it's just not what I expected, you know, the feelings that I would have. And here's the thing, like, let's say you created founders in this room, your own brand, or you're working on a brand, and you see it like at its peak in all the stores, and the quality's perfect, and you're eye to thigh, and you've got a great brand block, and everything's amazing. And then it starts to like go away. The quality's not good. The jars aren't good. And then you know, you feel that.
Would you ever go back
to Justin's? I mean, yeah.
I love it.
But I'd have to get control.
All right.
I'd have to.
Two more questions, because I want to know 10, 20, 30, 40 years, what's the legacy that you hope to leave behind? What is the feeling, the emotion you evoked, you know, that you hope this imprint you left becomes legacy? And the second question is, if you had one bit of advice you could offer every single founder in this room, what would that be?
Man, we didn't prep me for these questions.
Of
Yeah.
course I didn't. I got to throw some curveballs.
So no, he did. Anyway. So Josh is so organized.
Kind of, yeah.
So, legacy is so hard, right? Like it's such an ego thing. And my legacy is honestly like that I'm loved and respected and I left the earth a little better than when I got there. Like super, super simple. What was the other question? What would I tell everyone?
You had one bit of advice you could offer to.
Yeah. So I think what's really interesting is, well, I guess two quick things is one is I get asked a lot if this is a good idea, right? Like, who knows? I've seen some really crazy ideas really work and some really great ideas not work. But what makes these ideas work is the fact that you've started. And so really good entrepreneurs start. And if you don't start somewhere, you never end up anywhere. And so I think just getting started is the best idea. And because I started with jars and it pivoted to squeeze packs and then it took another pivot to peanut butter cups and who knows what's next. But if I didn't start, I would have never had that opportunity to keep going. And the second thing is for entrepreneurs, I think that all the business books out there are great, but really mental health and physical health is so important. And I think that if you don't, take the time to read the books that on your spiritual health and your mental journey and really like staying positive and, it's law of attraction and it's, the power of our word and our language, all of those things are so important. And when you're your brand, and this is the last thing, like when you're your brand, like Justin's, like I am of the opinion that I don't want to have a bad day. I don't want to have a negative interaction with someone that reflects on the brand. And so I really, projected this brand to be at this high level and I showed up to meet the brand there and I still try to do that every day. It's exhausting, but that's what we do, right? It's what we do.
Well, man, I'm just grateful for how you show up, and being real. I think everyone in this audience could probably agree that, your story is inspirational, man, and you're a real human being that built something really special with a whole lot of integrity, and we're lucky to have you in our orbit and just appreciate you and your willingness to open up. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone.